Welcome to Ask Dr. Change. I'm Dr. Linda Ackerman Anderson. I'm happy to have you join me today to explore how to seriously up-level your leadership and consulting to transformational changes, all through conscious change leadership. Welcome to today's episode. This is a special episode where I have the opportunity and honor to interview Rich Batchelor, who is the current president of the Association of Change Management Professionals. Let me read a little bit about Rich so you know who's going to be talking with you and sharing his wisdom. Rich Batchelor has been successfully delivering change for over 30 years across the globe. His passion for maximizing the benefits of change management is evident every time he engages others. He has a master's in change management and multiple other qualifications, adjunct and complementary to the change space. He currently runs his own consulting and learning practice, is a part-time professor and curator of the Toronto Change Days Conference. He thrives in navigating change, enabling, empowering, and guiding clients to realize the possibilities of change management to find their potential. After serving ACMP as a local chapter leader for many years, Rich joined the global board in 2021, and after serving as treasurer and vice president, is excited to be taking up the role of president in 2023. So Rich clearly has a long history in this field, and we're thrilled to talk with him today about what he sees currently and the future for the profession. Welcome, Rich. Happy to have you here.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
You're currently right now in London, having just finished an ACMP conference. Tell us a moment about your day.
Oh, it's been an amazing day. I get so much energy just being around other people in the change space. And we've had a fantastic day with so much focus on not just what has been happening in change, but what's potentially going to be happening in change as well. And I get so excited doing these things. So it's been fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask you about that shortly. I want to start with, how did you actually get into this field? How did it all begin for you?
Gosh, well, it was a long time ago. As my bio says, it's over 30 years I've been doing this. But, I'm fortunate to do what I love and love what I do in this field. But I started off, I was working in the UK at that time for local government. And some people might say the wrong place at the wrong time. I'd say the right place at the right time. I was working as a manager in an office for the government, and they were going to close a number of offices and sort of, solidify and bring them together into one place. And my office manager came up to me and said, these people are not going to be too happy about this stuff, but people seem to quite like you. Can you go and make them happy about this? And that was really my induction to change management. No processes, no methods. It was go make people happy about something they weren't going to be happy about, which probably is a bit of the story ever since. But that's how I started off in that space, and then really got traction from doing that work well and being successful and being given opportunities in so many ways to do these things going forward. So, that's really how I started off and worked my way through a career in government to begin with before running my own company.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So for you now, from 30 years of experience, what does success look like in the change management space?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I don't think there's one definite definition I would put on success. But for me, a lot of the work I do with clients, particularly now, and have done internal clients in the past, etc., it's been really about what they need, not necessarily what I think they need. I think sometimes we can get too caught up in telling somebody what they need to experience from a change space. Yeah. And I really want to be able to go and say, well, let's sort of unpack what your needs are and work out how to align with that piece. I always kind of go with a tagline of maximizing human potential, I suppose, because we do work in a space of humanity. You know, that's part of the space we work, and that's why I love doing it so much. So probably success for me would be realizing some potential from a group, an individual, an organization, whoever I'm working with at that point in time, to find out first of all, what they need to change, what that change looks like from all sorts of pieces, and then work with them to actually not just make that change happen, but make that change happen with them as well as part of that equation.
Beautiful. Well, say more to me about that, about change with them. Are you transferring your capability to your clients? Are you partnering? What does that mean to you?
Sure. So I often use the word actually change enablement. Those are the words I tend to use a lot more because I like to position myself as enabling a client, customer, whoever it may be, to actually achieve their potential. So for me, it's about having that engagement piece. I think sometimes we can get forgetful that change management is not a transaction. Change management is far more than just a transactional activity. So for me, it's about making sure I have that engagement to truly understand what the need is. And then from that, we focus on understanding what the client, the person, the individuals, the stakeholders, I suppose, if we want to get really into the change management language of this, what is it that makes them tick? What is it that's going to help them understand the gain of going along this pathway? And then what can I do to help them navigate this? So I'm very much somebody who is focused on that knowledge transfer, knowledge enablement, supporting the group that I'm working with to be able to take things forward off their own steam after working with me, rather than being somebody who's just doing it for them.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And I find that as a backbone of the best of us as change consultants is supporting our clients to do this work successfully long after we have left their circumstances. That's great. Well, I do want to ask you your own thoughts and thoughts that have come out of this conference in London about the future of the change field. What do you see happening? Where are we going? What are we needing?
So it's interesting because I think the key piece that comes out of it is that this is only going to get bigger. I think that was the overarching piece. And I agree with that because I think historically there's been a lot of anchored activity in, should we say, technology implementations for change management, and I totally understand that. But what we're recognizing now is that we're doing more and more work in cultural transformations, in organizational opportunities, redesigning businesses, even down to, health and well-being, diversity, equity, and inclusion, this whole broader people-based area that we focus on. And, what I personally think for myself, and then I'll add some notes from some of the conversations from today as well, so you get both sides of this piece. For me, what I'm noticing is that we are going to be doing a lot more work with people beyond just learning how to do something differently, but learning how to be something different. And that's what the way I see it going. And it's fascinating because we have the artificial intelligence, say, in technology, and that was some of the stuff that we talked about today coming up as some of the future and what does that mean? And, I go back and, with no offense to yourself, you probably go back a few years as well to the times when people were saying, oh, all this IT is going to remove the need for all these jobs and, we won't need people doing things anymore. And it never really happened. It never really came to fruition. But what happened was that the jobs changed. We evolved. And I think that's what's going to be happening so that, when I say about people being different, it's about that sort of behavioral, what is, maybe the difference between changing their outcomes versus their outputs that we've traditionally gone. So I think that's where I'm looking at the stuff. And a lot of the conversation we had today was highlighting the use of artificial intelligence as one area to support this, but also recognizing that we're also having to reframe the work we do to be much more about supporting others' navigation of a change rather than taking away their ownership of the change and that we've maybe historically done and stuff like that. So I find this fascinating, this piece and everything.
Absolutely. And it's very current. It's very important. High tech, high touch is more important now, I think, than ever. So do you have any early formulations about how you in your work or ACMP are going to support the development of people from the inside out? You know, our work is about conscious change leadership, and the conscious piece is all internal work. It's all mindset. And self-awareness and self-capability. How do you see serving that going forward?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think there is an overlap in the way that ACMP as an organization is going forward, because I see, you know, we've just started opening up work on the standard for change management that we were very proud to publish, but 8 years ago. You know, times have changed in 8 years. So as an association, we need to look at how we can change the way people use that and bring that into that much more behavioral based sort of supportive narrative that we need to be looking at. And recognizing as well things like the new technologies, the new evolution in, you know, project directions and things that, you know, the agile word comes up and things like this very much in these conversations. And I think for myself, in my own practice, the way I see this developing is much more around us, you know, enabling people to find solutions themselves. It's almost like a coaching practice in a way. It's that sort of piece coming in. And, you know, ACMP has done a lot of work with the International Coaching Federation over the last few years to kind of recognize that overlap of space. So maybe that's what we're doing is we're supporting that transition to coaching people through the experience and helping them to find that what's best for them rather than coming in and trying to solutionize and fix things. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. The whole building the capability for self-awareness, for understanding the impact that someone has in their way of being, and does it fit the needs of what they're attempting to support in the project. That's very exciting to hear that ACMP is going in that direction. Very exciting. So, you know, that leads me to also, you've begun in this direction, but just first for leaders and then for consultants, what messages would you want them to hear? What tips, what strategies, what do you think they need to hear right now? First, leaders.
I was going to say, let me take the leaders first, because I actually feel that with leaders, we are very quick to criticize them, but maybe we're not really supporting them in the first place to be in a position. So I do think as leaders and, you know, leaders of, in and with change, because I kind of capture all of that piece when I talk to this piece, we need to help them recognize their role in, you know, empowering and enabling the success to take place. It's not about command and control anymore. That ship has long sailed away. You can't do that, you know, and recognizing the expectation of younger generations in the workplace as well. And what that means as a leader, I think is really important. And, you know, we were talking today about recognizing how to be attractive to younger generations in this change management space, because far too many of us have been doing this for far too long, and we need to get new blood into the space very, very soon. So I think that piece, and that's where leaders can play a part, not just in their role to whether you call it sponsorship or act with agency for the change, or, give that advocacy piece, which I think we need to sit down and spend time coaching them on what that means, rather than trying to do, template transformation or anything like that with them, because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, we need to work with leaders to help them understand their role in supporting the knowledge increases that are needed within the teams they lead, and recognizing that they themselves don't need to know everything. They just need to know that it's there somewhere.
Yes. Yes. And how to facilitate the conversation so it can be co-created, so it can emerge. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. How about leaders as models and champions of what they're asking of the organization? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, because you actually just gave one of my trigger words as well, which is interesting, because champions is a trigger word for me. And I'll explain why that is, because I love the verb to champion a cause. But I get really prickly when people get labeled champions for change, because I always think that identifies them as the winner. The kind of like the champion, the winner of the change already. And we have so much of a battle between people feeling like they're losing something and, gaining and all that sort of stuff.
Yes,
so I'm always very nervous about using that word, I think, in the stuff that I do. But I also recognize whatever word we're talking about, people who play a part in, advocating for the change, supporting it, talking about it, labels are labels, whatever that sort of piece.
Yeah, and I think for sure.
I think that they need skill sets that go beyond maybe what's traditionally been given to leaders, because that, you just mentioned about facilitation skills. Facilitation skills are very, very unique in themselves. And I think there is a very strong demand for them to learn that facilitation is not controlling or chairing a meeting. So understanding that difference piece coming into that. And then being able to recognize learning opportunities within their team, and not trying to fix the learning, but helping that individual to discover what they need to do to fix that learning, because we all learn differently. So I'm a very visual person. Don't give me lots and lots of text, I switch off. But other people love to read and read and read lots of text. So what works for different people is going to be important on that stuff. So I think adding those skill sets in there. And then I think there is a serious sort of deficit in leadership for compassion and caring and that sort of space as well. And I use the word compassion versus empathy, even though I'd like to say empathy is something, but I almost feel that empathy is maybe the second level after they've discovered compassion. Maybe we shouldn't be rushing them to discover empathy straight away, but, discover a bit of compassion first for their, fellow workers and the people that they lead, etc., and everything like that. So once they have that built, then they can maybe discover what it means to be more empathic about the situations as well.
Yeah,
so,
beautiful.
Take them that way.
Yeah. Great points. I want to go back to your idea of facilitation, allowing a team to discover what it needs to do. That is so true of leadership. It's so true of leading teams in a discovery process. It's also very true in the nature of the transformational changes we're now faced with. We don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. You can't come forward, as you say, in a command and control, do this, because we're unclear. So the skill set becomes about learning to emerge, learning to discover, learning to shape, to facilitate what needs to come forward, what needs to be created. So I love that, because I think it's both at a high scale, the strategy for the change field more and more is transformational, as well as for leadership. That's great.
Historically, that facilitation has been to try and find answers. Well, maybe we need to find the questions first before we find the answers.
Yeah, I love
sometimes that's the challenge.
Yes, asking the right question. And then, because we don't always have answers, learning how to keep a question open long enough for something to clarify for itself. So Absolutely. Beautiful. That's great. How about tips and guidance for consultants?
So I think in the consulting space, there's always been a little bit of a two-camp motto. And I'll explain what I mean by this. There's been those that do it for you, and then those that help you to learn how to do it. And
Yes.
I think the second one is where I definitely sit. But I also think
Yes.
that's where more consultants need to sit, because I think you do your clients a disservice if you just go along and do it for them, because they'll never learn, it's that sort of piece. So I think maybe it's a little bit of a self-awareness piece that needs to be done for clients, and that's for any sort of consulting engagement. I think in the change space, the key piece is also about not trying to take on too much in one go. Sometimes we think we can make everything happen for the client, and sometimes we can't. It's too much. And I think for consultants, I think we need to be a little bit more sensible, because I'm hearing more and more about burnout and poor self-care and just exhaustion in the space with people doing 60, 70-hour weeks that are just not sustainable. And I think that's because we've overpromised what we can actually do. And it's not that we don't have the capability. I'm not saying that. It's just, do we have the time to be able to do that stuff that needs to happen? And sometimes, that's where we need to maybe step back a little bit in terms of, when we engage with an actual client, be real. Don't be, misplaced optimism can be your worst enemy, should we say, on that front. So maybe just thinking about that stuff. And then I think from the actual doing the engagement piece, one thing that I think is very evident from my own experience over the last, the pandemic really highlighted this a lot more with people's sort of needs, should we say, coming through. But, even before that, I was starting to see the need for a greater level of explanation in the communication, rather than just doing communication that said, we've done this. We've done this. We've done this. It's like, we've done this so that you can now do X, or so that we can now work on Y together, whatever it may be that we're actually focusing on. And I think that for me is really important, because that's part of reinforcing that, enabling the client to actually be able to take things forward. That sort of. So I'm seeing that as well. And I do recommend that. And I've had some conversations with folks where I'm seeing that opportunity. And then I think maybe a final comment just for consultants is keep on learning. You can never stop learning. Don't ever fall into the trap of thinking you know it all, because none of us do. We all need to keep on learning. So keep that continuous learning open.
Yeah, beautiful. So there's a lot for us as consultants, and I love your focus on the younger consultants bringing new energy into the field. I think that's really great. One of the challenges when you say we get too busy, and I sure did in my early days, burnout was definitely on the tips of my fingers a lot, is learning how to know what to prioritize. Like, what is important? What do I focus my attention on that has the highest leverage versus all of the things that are possibly needing attention? So I think that is a skill we consciously need to go after creating, and experience allows that, so it does require time, but also mentorship, also guidance. So how do you see yourself, and is there any strategy you see within ACMP or elsewhere about mentoring younger consultants to get as wise as they quickly can?
Yeah, I'm so thrilled you mentioned that topic area, because there's a multitude of pieces with that. So I actually love, as we mentioned in my bio, I teach, and I love working with the younger folk then to help them understand a lot of what they've never even thought about before, which is kind of fascinating as well. But I do think we need to have these support mechanisms. And I know for many years myself, I've always offered myself up for mentorship and said, every September-ish, I'll take on a couple of folks as mentors. And I know from an ACMP point of view, we've done this with a lot of chapters. There's been a number of chapters that have created mentorship schemes for those. And I've been involved with the local chapter that way, etc. But we do have to balance the amount of effort that people can give to this stuff because, as we were just talking about, all those hours that the consultants are doing, if you add on some mentorship hours on top of that, will it be worthwhile? But I do think there is some potential for mentorship overall. And I know that we are exploring whether we support chapters in the mentorship program, whether we do something globally on that front, or maybe it's a mix of that piece that we go forward with. But definitely, I think the appetite is there from younger generations to learn from others, but also to be able to ask questions of people in a space that they don't really have that many people to ask the question of, because it's not like you get taught change management 101 in high school or anything like that. So, it's, where do you go to find those answers and questions? So I think there's a lot of potential on that stuff. And I look back to my own experience. I had some great mentors throughout my career, and I've got some great colleagues now who started off as mentors that have supported me because I know I need support mechanisms in place. I am not somebody who, even with all my experience, can go it alone all the time. I need people to turn to when I need help and support, and just somebody to give me that reality check sometimes.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, I'm very excited, not just about the wisdom you bring to this conversation for yourself and your work and your own consulting, but also for the profession to actively move in this direction. It's very exciting to me. It's all music to my ears. I know you've taken on the presidency of ACMP, and that's going to take a good deal of your time. How about what else is next for you? What's your learning edge? What new goals do you have for yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, I do this thing of saying yes to things and working out how I can find the time for it. But I've had to learn how to be a little bit more self-caring over the last few years. But for me, there's a few things that I'm interested in, personal and professional development, should we say, which is continuing to expand my understanding of equity, diversity and inclusion space, because I'm finding myself drawn more and more into that space in the change and the cultural change stuff that I'm doing. So I think I'm an advocate for that space, but I also want to learn more about that sort of space as well, personally. But also from, maybe a more sort of professional piece. I want to be able to find a way of navigating those difficult questions that always seem to pop up, because I run my own business, but I am also advocating for the profession as part of ACMP. And I don't want any sort of conflicts to come between those two pieces. So that for me is almost a little bit of I wouldn't say a challenge necessarily, but something I want to be mindful of, and I want to be able to turn to others, because yes, I want to move the profession forward with both what I do professionally as a company, what I do as an educator, what I do for my conferences, when I speak, all of that sort of piece, but also with my ACMP role. And, the ACMP role as a president, it's still a volunteer role. I don't get any income for it or anything like that.
Right,
so,
right.
So I've still got to balance the number of hours that I give to all of these things. But I do think that's an important piece to navigate, because I want to show that you can still be professionally successful while still finding the time to volunteer and support the professional development of the profession that we are privileged to be part of.
So admirable of you. It's so admirable of you. I realize in listening to us, to you speak today, that I'm automatically transferring the wisdom you've shared about for leaders, for consultants, automatically making the assumption, oh, good, you're going to help enable that at ACMP. And I understand there are distinctions there, and we could use our whole methodology just on evolving the profession itself. So I respect the delicate boundary that you've described about what you are able to do personally, and then bring what wisdom you can to the profession. I think that's marvelous and really honorable. Last thoughts, any other bits of wisdom you would like to share with our audience?
So I suppose my final comments, and it kind of links in with a few of the pieces I've been talking about, and it does go into ACMP, I suppose, overall with this piece, is that having just mentioned about my continued growth in the equity, diversity, inclusion space and all of that stuff, also recognizing the global diversity of ACMP membership and developing ACMP not just as a North American anchor, but as North America being the first step of many steps toward maybe not quite global domination. Maybe that sounds a little bit evil in that sort of piece, but, I'm talking about, the global footprint that we need to recognize for what we do as a profession. And I think, I'm fascinated. Today's conference I was in London, we had 16 different countries represented in that conference, which is fantastic. I'm fortunate to lead a board that is the most globally diverse board that we have. A little bit challenging for meetings and time zones, but I'm also thrilled that brings so many insights from Europe, from Asia and beyond. It's just that's fascinating for me.
Yeah, fabulous. I will share just a personal moment with you as you talk about going global. In 2020, at the very beginning, I was asked to do a keynote at the Change Management Conference in Ukraine. And it was right when the evidence of the war potentially happening was emerging. And I had a number of conversations with the woman who was leading it, Elena. And finally I said to her, I can't imagine this happening. The war is at your doorstep. And then ultimately I got a final email from her saying the conference was canceled. They were making Molotov cocktails and using their time that way. And that was the last I heard from Elena. And so my heart has been one with Ukraine, but also knowing that change management is around the world. So I think it's fabulous that you have a board that represents the global diversity and that level of thinking and the distinctions, the uniquenesses of various countries and their level of development and needs is present in your conversation and your strategies. That's brilliant. Just brilliant. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, Rich, this has been an honor. I truly have loved hearing what you're talking about. Again, music to my ears. It's great. And then knowing that you're at the helm of the association for the change management profession is thrilling to me. So I want to thank you for your time and thank you for your wisdom and experience. I've enjoyed our conversation enormously.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Today's subject is one of the key topics that we feature in our Leading Transformational Change online program. If you'd like to learn more about leading transformational change, go to beingfirst.com/LTC. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope you gained some valuable insights for your work. Please send me your questions and challenges by going to askdrchange.com.